Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Snail Mail with Smokey. I'm Smokey, and as always, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you're at. Now, why did I say this is a special episode? I'm glad you've asked. It's special because I've teamed up with Rob from That Dead Guy here on YouTube to bring you this episode. Now, here's what's going to happen. I have sent Rob 5 questions related to philately. In return, Rob sent me 5 questions related to philately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions that I sent to Rob, and then I'm going to answer the questions that he sent me. But in order to know the questions that Rob sent me, you're going to have to watch his half of the video. And in order to know the answers to the questions that I'm giving Rob, you also need to watch his half of the video. So I'm really excited about this. I'm so thankful to Rob for doing this with me. It has been a lot of fun chatting with him back and forth and putting this thing together. And it's just been so exciting for me to do. And Rob sent me some really great questions, some things that really made me stop and think. So I'm really excited to get into this video. I hope as soon as you're done watching this, you'll watch Rob's, or if you just watch Rob's, thank you for watching this video. So let's get right to it, shall we? My first question for you, Rob, is what is your first stamp-related memory? All right, so that's the first question that I have for Rob. Now, I'm going to answer the first question that he sent me, and if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading these questions off of my laptop. So, Rob, thank you for your first question. The answer is a pretty broad answer. I have always been interested in the mail. I remember as a young boy, I grew up in the country. One of the first Christmas gifts that I bought my parents when I was, 7, 8 years old, was a new mailbox. I went to the store. I had saved up some money from doing various things, allowance or whatever, and I bought my mom and dad a mailbox that looked like a barn, and so I gave that to them for Christmas. I remember when I was young, checking the mail every day when I got home from school. I remember writing letters. In those days, we didn't go to the post office very often because we lived in the country. Postage stamps were 25 cents. So we could actually put the letter in the mailbox and put a quarter on top of the letter, and the mailman would come by and take our quarter and put a stamp on the letter and mail it for us. So I've really always been interested in the mail. Just every aspect of it. When I got older, I've never been a collector of things per se. I don't come from a family of collectors. But around my mid-30s, I was really searching for something to do with my free time, something to kind of unwind and de-stress. And I needed a hobby. And so I was sitting around one day, and I love history. And I love travel. I don't get to travel as much as I'd like, but I really do enjoy it. So I was watching my favorite travel program that's on public television here in America, and it's all about Europe, and I love Europe so much. And the gentleman on the program was in a country. He was actually in a micro country. He was in San Marino, and he was talking about how tourists travel to San Marino in these micro countries, and how they get their passport stamped, but also how they buy postage stamps from there, and they collect those stamps from the micro countries that they get directly at the post office. And I don't know, something in my head just clicked and said, "Wow, Smoke, you love the mail. You like getting mail and receiving mail, being a pen pal. You need to collect stamps." I don't know, it was like this huge light bulb went on my head and said, "You need to collect stamps." So that's what I did. I told my wife, I said, "I'm going to collect stamps." She said, "Great, awesome, go for it." I love online auctions. I love eBay. I've been on eBay for a long time, buying things just all kinds of various stuff. I said, hey, I bet eBay sells stamps. I had no idea whether they sold stamps or not. And sure enough, I went on eBay. I typed in postage stamps. There's like 50,000 listings for postage stamps. And right away, I bought some stamps. And I don't recall what they were, but I bought some stamps. And that's been, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And I'm hooked. I've been hooked ever since. So probably not the traditional answer to that question, but that's my story. And so thanks, Rob, for asking. So Rob, my second question for you is, what is one interesting fact about philately that you feel would surprise most people? All right, so Rob, that's a great second question that you asked me. I love the penny black. As you know, it's the first adhesive postage stamp issued by Great Britain in 1840. Its issuance paved the way for every other postage stamp that is in circulation today. I also like the Machen series of stamps, designed by Arnold Machen. They're simple. They consist of a simple sculpted profile of Queen Elizabeth II and a denomination. They're usually just in a single color, and there is a myriad of colors that they come in. There is something both regal and classic about the Machen stamps, and I think that's what makes them such a joy to collect. But if I'm being honest, the real answer to your question is this stamp here. Now I'm going to put a bigger image of it right up here beside me so you can see it. But this stamp was released by Austria on October 17th, 1997. It is Scott number 1737. In English, it's called House in Wind. It is painted by an Austrian artist, and I'm going to put his name up here because I will do a horrible job of pronouncing it. It has a value of 7 Australian shillings. Look, I love everything about this stamp. I love the color. I love the details. I love the things that you can only see when you've got it under magnification or you've zoomed into it on your computer. The movement, the emotion in the stamp are magnificent. And as a person who really struggles with thoughts that are racing in and out of my mind all the time at like 1,000 an hour, I see that in this stamp and in this painting, in this tiny miniature work of art. To me, it represents the whirlwind that's in my mind that I can't see on my own. But when I look at this stamp, here it is. It plays out on this very miniature work of art. Now, you may think it's just a stamp. Do you really see all that? Do you really feel all that emotion? Yes. I realize it's just a stamp. But that's what philately is all about. Philately is about looking beyond the stamps, at the stories that they have to tell us. Being a philatelist is more than just someone who collects. You can collect anything. And people do, and that's great. But being a philatelist is more about just collecting something for the sake of collecting. It is about the story that item has to tell us. It is about the history of that postage stamp. It is about the journey that it has taken. If it's a postally used stamp, it started in one location and it made a journey and it traveled to a destination. And then as collectors, when we buy them, it made a totally different journey to get to us. And so that's the great thing about philately is the emotions and the stories that these stamps evoke, and the things they have to tell us. So while yes, it's just a tiny piece of paper, it's just a postage stamp. It's so much more than that. And if you're a philatelist, I know that you understand that. So I really do see that when I look at this stamp. I really do feel those emotions. I remember the first time I saw this stamp, I was just looking through a list of stamps that somebody online had for sale, trying to find things for my collection, and this thing just popped out to me, and I was like, wow. I guess the best way to describe it is it's like being in an art gallery or being in a museum, and you go by painting after painting or sculpture after sculpture, art piece after art piece, and you finally get to one, you're like, wow, this is magnificent. This is beautiful. Yes, the rest of these things are awesome, but there's something about this that draws me to it. That's what this stamp does for me. Austria printed around 4 million of these stamps, so they're not rare at all. Currently, I own about 50 of them. I have a couple first day covers. I have a couple postal cards with this stamp on it. Every time I see one for sale, I buy it. That's how much I love it. And so I have a binder that's dedicated to just this one stamp. And so every time I can, I add it to my collection. So another great question, Rob. Thank you. So okay, Rob, question 3 for you. If you could design a stamp for Canada Post, what would it look like? All right, so for my third question, that's a tough one, Rob. It's a tough one because I don't have a holy grail. I don't collect stamps for the investment. I know that there are people out there that do, and that's fine. And I know that there are some really high-priced stamps, some really rare stamps that I will never be able to afford. And there are some so rare that even if I was able to afford them, I'd never be able to get my hands on one. So that's a really hard question for me to answer. Wow, I guess it's kind of a momentary decision for me. You know, right now I'm working on filming that album, A Stamp for Every Country. I'm also working on a thing where I'm trying to collect the first 100 stamps that were released by the micro countries that I collect, by Liechtenstein and Andorra and San Marino and Vatican City. I'm working on a collection where I collect each first 100 issues from each of those micro countries. So I guess my answer would be the first those stamps in the first 100 of those micro countries that I don't have yet. I like lists. I'm a checklist kind of guy, and so I've made a little spreadsheet with all the micro countries that I collect, and I've put numbers 1 through 100. And when I'm able to find a stamp, I check it off the list and then add it to my first 100 album. So yeah, probably one of those stamps. Like I said, I don't have a holy grail. I just enjoy collecting stamps. I enjoy stamps that speak to me. I rarely think about the value. I guess the only time I really think about the value is if I'm like, wow, I can't afford that stamp. Yeah, that would be it. One of those stamps to fulfill my list for my first 100 collection. So, for you, Rob, question 4, if money was no object, what one stamp would you buy and where would you house it? All right, so for my 4th question, Rob's asked me another really great question. And it's a difficult question. Look, there's no right or wrong answer to this question. I think this is just merely a matter of opinion. There are several. Great Britain produces some phenomenal postage stamps. I mean, really, really nice stamps. I mean, they are the home of the first adhesive postage stamp. They are the home of the Machen series, which I've already mentioned about how much I like the Machen. They have some really classic stamps like the Machen, and then they have some really great whimsical stamps. You know, the Doctor Who stamps. They have, you know, rock and roll legends. I mean, architecture, agriculture, science. They do it all, and so they have some really great stamps. There are other countries who do tremendous things with stamps, and I think every country that issues stamps has issued some stamps that are really good, and some stamps that you look at and go, you know, the U.S. has issued some really nice stamps, but then the U.S. has issued some stamps that I look at and go, what were they thinking? But that's the joy of being a collector. You collect what you like and what you want, and what you don't, you leave out of your collection. If I had to narrow it down and give you a straight answer, it's Austria. It's Austria. Austria has a great postal tradition. They've been producing quality postage stamps for a really, really long time. Matter of fact, when I first started collecting, some of my first stamps were from Austria. Just because, look, I didn't know a thing about postage stamps. I didn't know about their value. I didn't know about how to collect them. I was just out there buying stamps that I thought looked nice. Stamps that appealed to me, that were themes that I liked, and that had imagery that I liked. And Austria has some really great stamps. They have some really nice classic designs. They have great stamps that really fit into my cartoon theme area. So if I had to choose, it's Austria. But there are so many great stamps in the world from every country and every postal system. And so that's why I'm a worldwide collector. You know, there are people who just collect Great Britain. They just collect the United States. They just collect Austria or Japan or China or Canada or something like that. I'm a worldwide collector. If it's a stamp that appeals to me, it's going to go in my collection. So thank you so much, Rob, for that answer. That brings me to my final question for Rob. So Rob, your fifth and final question is, what would you consider the most unusual stamp in your collection, and why? And so now to answer my final question from Rob. Great question, Rob. A really, really great question. And the answer would be two things. But I really believe that these two things are intertwined. First, there are no rules. People may try to convince you that there is a right way and a wrong way, but do not believe them. I really struggled with this when I first started collecting. Like I've mentioned, when I first started collecting stamps, I didn't know anything at all about philately. To be honest, I didn't even know the word philately. Okay, but as I was researching, I'm like, oh, it's called philately, and if you collect stamps and you study them and their history, you're called a philatelist. I'm like, wow, what a cool word. So the first thing I did was I bought a book. Really good book, and I learned a lot of information, a lot of things that you need to learn as a beginning stamp collector. What mint stamps are, what used stamps are, what stamp hinges are, and stamp mounts, and what perforations are, and things like that. Just very basic beginner things. So when I first started collecting, I read books, I read vlogs, I watched plenty of videos, and when one person said, hey, you got to put all your stamps in a stock book, I went out and bought a stock book. And then I read another article or another book or watched another video, and they said, oh, no, you've got to store all your stamps in an album. So what I do, I ran out and bought an album because I wanted to be a good philatelist. And in the end, what happened is I wasted a lot of time. and I wasted a lot of money trying to duplicate someone else's collection. So what I had to do was I had to realize, look, it's my collection and no one else's, and I had to find a way to make it my own. So in previous videos, I've shared with you my system for cataloging and housing my stamps, and that's the system that's conducive to me. That's how I collect. I use the storage system that I like to use. The budget that I set for stamps is the budget that I'm comfortable spending. I collect the things that I enjoy collecting. And sometimes that means I don't collect the whole series. I collect 1 or 2 stamps out of that series because that's what I enjoy. And that brings me to the second part of my answer. Have fun. Okay, we all have responsibilities in life. We all have things that are tugging at us and trying to pull us in various directions. And from time to time, we're fortunate enough to take a few minutes and stop and do something just for fun. That's what philately is meant to be. It's not just it's not about investing, although it can be, I suppose. It's not about having the quote unquote perfect collection. Because if you're happy with it, then your collection is perfect to you. It's a hobby. Look, and hobbies are meant to be fun. So have fun. There are no right ways. There are no wrong ways. Have fun. Do what brings you joy and happiness. Besides, after all, if it's not fun, it's just another job, right? So, Rob, thank you so much. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you for doing this. This was a great deal of fun for me. I hope it was for you, and I hope it was for all of you that are watching. And I really hope to do more collaborative videos like this in the future.
Well, I want to thank you for joining Snail Mail with Smokey today. An unusual video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see the other half of it, you got to go over to that dad guy and watch what he is doing as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. And if you're so inclined to do it for that dad guy as well. So thank you so much. Until next time, have a great day and bye-bye.